Welcome to Season 7 of the Queer Consciousness Podcast. I'm Kit Sargent, and my pronouns are they, them.
And I'm Jess Grace Garcia, and my pronouns are they, them. We're just humans wanting to share the lived experience of other humans.
This season, we're talking about all things sex. We want to have deep, heart-led conversations as we unpack what sex means to us and why it's so important to talk about it.
This is a season of unlearning, relearning, and sharing about a topic that is still considered taboo.
Because at the end of the day, we are all spiritual, sexual beings having a human experience, walking each other home.
So, that was Embry. What did you think of our conversation with her? What was your biggest takeaway?
So cool. Like, she has a way of like putting you at ease, which I think is probably a really useful skill.
Oh yeah.
In sex work, you know, and she just I also just loved how chill she was and relaxed and like bro-ish.
Yeah.
Like that.
It was a very friend conversation where even though both of us were coming into it very new, she's new to both of us. It was really easy for us to just kind of immediately sink into the conversation, to like to your point of her being so open. Yeah, definitely very welcoming.
Yeah, and I think she was also kind of sorting out like how comfy can I be with these folks, you know? And it was nice to, by the end of the conversation, just like realize, wow, we've covered a gambit of topics.
Yep.
Yeah, I felt good about it. I feel like this is one of my favorite episodes now. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I learned a lot. I mean, I was a little quieter this episode than I was in the last one. But then again, last one is because Christine and I are friends. So it was really easy for me to have.
I didn't think you were too quiet, though. I thought that you spoke up enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because we were, you know, like when we were talking about like deep into sex work, I really had to like kind of ask myself, like, what kind of question would I want the answer to when listening to this? And so there were a couple of moments that I was like, okay, come on, Jess, like not everyone has ever spoken to a sex worker. Not everyone knows certain things that you like. What were some of the things you were curious about when you first started having friends who were sex workers? And that's I had to do that kind of like live in the moment. Was like, okay, she needs to know what she can offer up, and she will offer it up, but she needs us to ask to get there. And that was like, once I realized that, I was like, okay, I can help get us to those places, you know?
Yeah. I was like, the funny thing is, I was like, I have so many questions, but I have no idea which one I want to ask. Or even like one or two, because every time you would say something or every time she would say something, I'd be like, oh, question. And then, of course, me being in the moment, I was like, and then she would answer it, which helpful, didn't actually have to ask it. But then I would forget the other question that didn't get answered in her answer. And I'd be like, this is why I write things down. And I forgot to do that today because my brain has been all over the place this morning already. So I'm like, you know what? It's fine. It's fine. My biggest takeaway was the fact that, like, for some reason, there is a legitimate deconstruction to sex work pipeline.
Yes.
It's not a very big slide. Like, it's not a very long slide. It's a very, very specific slide that you kind of have to go down a couple steps, and then you get to the slide before you actually go down it and into the pond. But it was just one of those things where I was just like, it's so interesting, but also to your point of when we were in the conversation, and you were talking about how sometimes people get into sex work to reclaim their own sexual identity. Like, that makes sense to me. Especially because, like, and I didn't say this in the episode because we kind of breezed right past it, but that's okay. I can say it now. When you were talking about your experience with belts, that was my same experience, but with actual spanking. So, like, I would get full hand whapped. And so for me, anytime somebody, like, even playfully smacks me, that's a hard line for me.
Yeah.
And I don't think that is ever going to be something that I will be able to fully get over.
Right.
Just because of the legitimate physical abuse that would come with that every time I did something wrong.
So I'm curious, as an athlete, you know, one of the things that we do is we smack each other's butts. You know, that's
yeah,
the thing
I never
that happens.
Nope.
And so if someone smacks your butt, you were like, hey, no.
Oh, it wasn't even a hey. No, it was a death glare. You do that again and I will punch you in the face.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
To the point where there was one time that somebody did that to me and I just legitimately up and shoved them, mainly because it completely took me off guard. They came up behind me and smacked me really hard. And then when I turned around and I saw that it was not my parent and it was not my sibling, then it was just, teenage me. I was raging, angry all the time. We've already had that conversation, but I just shoved him as hard as I could. And I was like, don't you ever do that again.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like sometimes Erica doesn't need to hit me so hard when she smacks my butt when I'm walking past. And sometimes I have to be like, no. And she doesn't, I don't know that I've connected the dots with the fact that it was, hands were used every now and then, but mostly my parents like protected their hands. And I think there was something to be said for if they weren't using their hands, it was a different sort of thing. It wasn't abuse. But using their hands felt like abuse. Whereas if they used a spoon, or they used a slotted spatula, or they used my dad only used belts, that was different for some reason, than a hand or a switch, And so yeah, it is interesting. I've talked to a few different folks who've had just different ways of either reclaiming or letting, like, just being like, you know what, that's just not an area I like to go into. I think what is negative is when people have an experience and that's the only thing they accept as the experience. So like I had a woman who had a big issue with our Lavender Mafia podcast because we talked about BDSM in one of the episodes, and she got really, really upset. She was someone who was in a community that I was leading, and she was what I eventually realized was just had a history of someone abusing that sort of position. And like it's kind of like the oh my god, we talked about it, we alluded to it in the Black Pony Club episodes with Killian, but there's the actor who played Call Me by Your Name, who that's what he's done. He like says he's in BDSM, but what he's actually doing is he's abusing
Army Hammer.
That Army Hammer, yeah, he's abusing that power. And so I think if you've had a certain kind of experience, like I doubt that those women can re-enter those kinds of kink spaces without feeling a host of triggers. You know what I mean? And those that have, and I know plenty of people who've had a bad experience. Like, for example, if their first experience with polyamory was bad, and toxic, they still push through and they find, they're like, no, I still want to try and, find someone who's healthy. It takes a lot to go, the whole thing isn't bad.
Right.
It's a lot to say, like, okay, maybe this was just a bad actor, and maybe this was a bad person acting poor, or this was a person acting poorly, and maybe not the whole thing is bad. It's kind of like when I've been baffled by men who've experienced sexual trauma and are still able to like claim their queerness. They've experienced some sort of sexual trauma by a male figure in their life as a kid, and yet they still are able to be like, but I am gay.
Yeah.
And like, I am blown away, impressed as fuck by humans like that.
Yeah.
And in some ways, that's what Embry was doing, was like reclaiming the religiosity, like the whole story about telling, the whole like recorded like thing. It's kind of towards the end of the episode, if you haven't listened yet, but she talks about a shaming kink, and I just was like, yeah, I mean, like, for me that would be interesting, because like I had a lot of financial shame growing up in a really poor family, and it took a long time like to figure out like, as an entrepreneur, I can control my own, income and not feel shame around that. But I'd be curious if a fucking like reference to Dave Ramsey would be something that would be like, oh, interesting. Or if it would be like, ooh, trigger.
Yeah.
in the middle of a sexual moment. You know?
Right,
Like,
right. You're like,
because
and
of
that
my
took
own,
me right out of it.
literally because of my own financial anxiety versus like if she did a I Kiss Dating Goodbye thing, I feel like I'd be more interested in that, you know, like that, because that leans more on that purity culture kink, which I'm into, you know. But I was also someone had to like get over the idea of like, God, I admit this, but it always makes me so grossed out at myself. But like I used to think that like I only wanted to be with a virgin. Why? Because of that shitty stuff that was formed in us, you know, like when met my wife and dated her, and she very openly told me like how many people she had. I actually asked that she didn't tell me at first because like I was like worried that I would like have like some sort of hold up over the fact that like, oh, she's had much more experience than me and I'm not, you know, up to par or something.
Well, like one of the things that I remember being told, especially like when I was still in the church, was if you are going to be with someone who has already had multiple sexual partners, you have to remember that not only are you having sex with them, but then you're also having sex with all of their partners as well. And I'm like, I don't really want, you know, that's not a great outlook. And a lot of, especially in new age spiritual spaces, you'll hear very similar rhetoric.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, you guys really just decided to cut and paste this.
Yeah.
But call it something entirely different. Instead of saying like partners, instead of saying like you're having sex with multiple partners, it's like you still have their energy with you. And it's like, okay, hold on. Like, no.
Yeah.
Wow, you guys really just whitewashed all of Christianity and all of purity culture. And just like I did with deconstructing my actual religion that I was raised in, I had to then go and deconstruct the like new age spirituality pipeline that I was starting to go down, that I realized that I was starting to go down. And I was like, why does this all seem so freaking familiar? And then it finally hit me and I was like, oh, because I literally just jumped out of mainstream Christianity into side stream Christianity that is still going the same direction. Get out of the water, friend.
It's such a temptation to become, and I'm trying to remember who said this, who used this term, and I've just rolled with it ever since. But like this term, I think it was my friend Ruth says the term fundamentalist, like in reference to non-Christian people all the time. Like, it's like you just became, or I said it to her and she loved it and she's rolling with it. But this idea of like, yeah, I just felt a better justification for my fundamentalist thinking instead of undoing the actual way of thinking, you know? And we're dealing with that a lot in progressive spaces and on the left, you know? There's a lot of fundamentalist thinking. There's a lot of black and white thinking that we have to keep working through. We have to keep working through. Because like one of the things we alluded to in this episode, and we've alluded in a lot of episodes or kind of faced a little head on, is like when she answered in the Patreon, the question around the Patreon exclusive, the question around like best and worst experiences. Worst experience revolved around like her own experience with even within her marriage, because it sounds like that was the first and longest context of having sex, and was like any situation where I feel forced. Yeah, that's like I'm trying to meet what I'm supposed to do as a wife. That exactly. Like I hear that a lot, and it's like it doesn't mean that husband forced anything.
Right.
It doesn't mean that your partner was acting poorly, but it's what you both were taught.
Right.
And so now you guys are causing harm to each other. So how do we get out of that harm?
Right.
And I hear that from heteronormative couples who came out of Christianity or evangelicalism all the time. Yeah. It's such a hard place to be, but my point in bringing that up is that it would be absolutely the wrong thing to do to blame the man in the situation as the one that has caused harm.
Yeah.
And zooming out is really important there, and being like, oh, a lot of men in power, and sometimes women in power told us that this is the only way to be, and it's actually more nuanced than that. We have a whole system that has caused this sort of pain.
Yep.
And so if you think you can just kind of skip and jump over the hard parts, the hard bits of deconstructing, then you're sorely mistaken. You're sorely mistaken. I've used deconstructing, and speaking of using terms in non-Christian spaces or what they were created in, I use deconstructing outside of Christian spaces all the time as a term.
Oh yeah.
Deconstructing societal norms, whatever it is, and people are like, "That's such a good word." I'm like, I know. That's why I like using it.
Well, especially because like when you start to especially those of us that have deconstructed our religious upbringings, where we have legitimately pulled apart why we were taught the things that we were taught in the way that we were taught them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why do we believe this? When we start legitimately taking that why to the nth degree, where it's like, why was I taught this? Why were they taught this? Why was it interpreted like this? Why was it then taught through this interpretation? Why did this guy interpret it this way, where this guy interpreted it this way? Where was the disconnect between these two interpretations, and why was this one interpretation the one that got picked? And that's what I like. To put a little Christianese on it. When I was taught how to study the Bible, I was taught to use multiple biblical sources, because different translations say different things, which will then give you a different interpretation of each scripture passage. Because you're supposed to be able to argue with the Bible. Like that's why. That's what you're supposed to do.
But the essential part of that sort of work was to know the context of those verses.
Correct.
And I think where Christian nationalism and evangelicalism have fallen astray is that they use whatever 3 verses they can find to legitimize their way of thinking.
Yep.
And yeah, you see that show up in a lot of other places as well. Like, I don't know, ad marketing. Whenever I get like marketed a specific kind of thing because, okay, we talked about perimenopause too much, or we talked about, whatever the subject is, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm getting a lot of ads that are all of that flavor, which makes me start to believe, wait a second, is this what I'm missing?
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, maybe, but it can be really, really intoxicating to have a lot of things thrown at you all at once, target marketing.
Yeah.
Because you looked at one thing, and then you're like, oh my gosh, is this what I'm into now?
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of sexuality, like I think like in TikTok, like did a really good job of creating algorithms, and there were a lot of women that came to terms with their bisexuality, and probably men too. But like there was definitely a lot of women who got on the side of like, queer talk and dyke talk, and you're just like, whoa. And I think a lot of people came to terms, but I think some people were just a little like, wait, does this mean I'm gay now because this is what my algorithm's giving me? And maybe, but not definitively. And I think that's what I'm kind of getting at is like, when you have just one message that's being like streamlined to you, it's really easy to not do the extra work of getting context for all of these sources that are pointing us in a specific direction.
Right. And
oh, your energy is off. Oh, your energy is. Oh, your energy. Oh, your energy. And then it's like, oh, actually, I'm just iron deficient.
Right. Or especially like neurospicy people, when it's like, I am so aggravated right now. And the first thing that somebody will, especially friends that know you, the first thing that they will ask you is, have you eaten? Have you drank anything? You are probably hungry and dehydrated. Yep. Go nourish yourself and then tell me how you feel.
Yes.
To quote Snickers, you're not you when you're hangry.
Oh my God. Don't make me want a Snickers.
Sorry.
Well, these recaps are supposed to be short, but No, that was a really good conversation. I was really happy with it. I really loved it. And yeah, I meant it. I don't think I often tell our guests like I can't wait to meet you in person. But we've had several of those this season, and I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, we have.
I'm glad to be your co-host, Kit.
I'm glad that you're here being my co-host. It's so much more fun with friends. And I have finally come to the conclusion that a threesome is better than a duo.
That's right.
Because the best things in life are threes.
Done. My work is done. Mic drop.
Oh, all right. Until next time. Okay, so Jess, because of the fact that you have said multiple times that you have wanted to expand your play abilities, we are going to be doing something a little different from here on out. So, listener, this is going to be us wonderfully holding Jess and challenging them in their ability to do a little bit of role play. And for our Patreon little breaks in the middle of our episodes, we are going to be doing Patreon skits. And I'm going to thank Christina Van Epps and her podcast called Cryptids and Conspiracies, because that is what they do. And I stole the idea straight from them. So basically, what we are going to be doing is we are going to be putting on a tiny little skit where we give you a very short breakdown of our podcast, Patreon, and the tiers and everything that comes with them. And we are going to be doing little improv skits as we do. So, Jess, you ready?
I guess.
All right. So, the idea that I have for this particular episode, or for this episode and for this particular skit, is we are going to be doing the Patreon tiers as broadcasters reading the headlines. Okay. So, first and foremost, we want to thank Mackenzie and Christina for being part of our Patreon and subscribing and supporting us and our podcast. And we legitimately could not do this without you. So, thank you guys so much. All right, ready?
I think so. Is this me? Now over to Jess, and then I just have that one line, right? Okay. I think I'm ready.
Yeah?
It's gonna be what it's gonna be. Let's do it.
All right. Welcome to patreon.com/queer consciousness podcast. Thank you for joining us today. And now, for today's news. We are starting with a story about patreon.com/queer consciousness podcast and their $5 community tier. This tier helps the pod pay for things like the podcast feed and the Zoom memberships so that they can record. You get access to Kit's episode blog for every podcast and every guest, where they share their thoughts on the conversations that they didn't get to say in the conversation. Once there are 10 patrons at this level, a monthly hangout on Zoom will happen with hosts and other Patreon supporters. You will also get to watch videos as well as hear Patreon exclusive chats. That is only available if you join the Patreon. Supporters will also get a shout out in the episode. So thank you for joining. Now, over to Jess with the producer tier.
Why, thanks, Kit. The producer tier is, what's it? $10. $10, yes. This is a salary tier, pretty low salary if you ask me. If you ask me, it's pretty low. But when you sign up for this tier, everything goes straight to me. It goes straight to me to compensate me for my work on the pod. At the end of every episode, you'll get a special shout out as a producer. You'll be just as equal to me as a producer. Special shout out. You also get all the perks of the community support tier as well. It's a lot, but only $10. Think about that, folks. It's only $10. Come on. Now back to you, Kit.
Thanks, Jess. Our final story is about the $25 patron tier. How it breaks down is this: $5 for podcast expenses, $10 for Jess's salary, and the other $10 will go into a community aid fund. That fund will be used for community support of the Patreon community, organizations and nonprofits that support the queer community, or other endeavors that are voted on by the members of the Patreon. There are also videos from Season 6 in the Patreon, and Kit did a blog post for all of those episodes as well. So you can go and read those, as well as the blogs from Season 7. We also have a bunch more ideas that we will be posting once we start doing more push goals. So go check it out, and thanks for supporting us. Now, a brief word from our sponsors.
Hey, listeners of Queer Consciousness. Clearly, you have excellent taste, so we wanted to introduce ourselves. My name is Elise, they, them.
I'm Carrie, she, they, and together we created our podcast Proudly on Record to give a platform to queer stories as an act of resistance.
We would love to invite you to join our conversations with queer folks exploring the long-term effects of religious trauma, journeys of deconstruction, and the joy that comes from living life as your true, authentic self.
Lately, we've spoken with conversion therapy survivors, explored the sapphic drag queen scene, asked ex-Mormons how they survived without caffeine, and interrogated mental health experts on why. Just why?
So, if you've ever felt entitled to monetary compensation due to your religious trauma, or have ever wanted to waltz with potatoes up and down the produce aisle, have we got a show for you.
You can find Proudly on Record on all streaming platforms.
Now, back to our favorite theys, Jess and Kit.
This podcast is hosted by me, Kit Sargent, co-hosted and produced by Jess Grace Garcia of Springward Productions, and the theme music is by Brian Smith of Holy Holy Music Productions. If you could do us a huge favor and please like, follow, comment, share, do all of the things on all of the socials. You could follow the podcast on Instagram @_queer.consciousness for all the latest episodes as well as any other exciting news. When you're listening on Spotify, please leave a 5-star rating and use the comment box for anything you'd like us to talk about. When you're listening to Apple Podcasts, please leave a comment and a 5-star rating. If you'd like to be on the podcast, send a message to queerconsciousnesspod@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the podcast, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/queerconsciousnesspodcast. We are trying to grow as organically as possible, and this helps other like-minded people who want to empower and encourage others on their journey. So until next time, remember to stand in your truth and know that you are worthy, just as you are. Hey friend, just wanted to take a quick second to remind you that if you or someone you know is struggling and don't know where to turn, the trained volunteers at the LGBT National Hotline are here to help. Because sometimes the strongest thing to do is to ask for help. The National Hotline phone number is 888-843-4564. And if you want to check out the other things that they have available for them to help you with, you can check out the lgbthotline.org in order to be able to see all of the services that they offer in order to help our community.